So let's start with the refuge. We go for refuge to all the Buddhas, so that all sentient beings may realize Buddhahood. We go for refuge to all the Buddhas, so that all sentient beings may realize Buddhahood. We go for refuge to all the Buddhas, so that all sentient beings may realize Buddhahood. So I think it was advertised that I was going to speak about pranidhanas today, the intention, and strengthened intention. But actually I had another plan, which was to give a second talk on the topic I talked about in October, I think it was, looking in my notebook. The last time I gave one of these talks. Is that right?
Might have been.
Yeah? Oh, well, there you go. Time flies. So, I don't know if you're all aware of this book called Living the Awakened Heart, but it's a booklet that just gives you an overview of the long-term vision for a student training in the Sangha. So when you first come in, you're introduced to meditation, and you're invited to sign up for the Discovering the Heart of Buddhism course, which then is a training in its own right, and it goes very deep. So, in a way, you can think, okay, that's it. That's enough for me. That's a lifetime's practice. But we also teach that we can deepen our understanding by spiraling around the same topics and going deeper, so that we run events in which we're teaching different topics, and this booklet kind of explains how those different topics link in together with Discovering the Heart of Buddhism, that it's all of a piece. So I came up with these 6 areas of training decades ago, really, on the basis of my own experience of practicing within the Tibetan Buddhist tradition. And they have many different practices and many texts and so many things that you could look at. You sort of think, oh, well, how do you make any sense of it? So I thought about also the people's experience here in the West. Many people who are practicing have very busy lives, and they might die at any time, and they want something that they can be sure is going to help them when they die and help them while they live. So that what is sort of common to everybody, that everybody would understand, that everybody needs, that's the essence of the Dharma, is love and compassion, basically. Like if you have a heart full of love and compassion when you come to die, or in your living your life, you'll get things more or less right. It might not go as fast or as well as might, but basically you'll be on the right track. And it's when you fully understand the Dharma, then you realise actually that's all you need to know. You can understand how love can extend to all beings, that there's no limit to it, that you can open your heart to all beings, you can work forever for all beings, but that takes vision. But even just intuitively we feel that love is what it's about. So I put that first. Okay, get that in place, and you won't make bad karma if your heart's full of love. All the negative karmic actions arise from when you're feeling hostile and cut off from other people. But when you feel close, okay, you might get a bit attached, but then that brings its own suffering, doesn't it? It's when you get angry and your love is getting blocked that the problems start. Yes, when we get attached, we tend to get angry, don't we? If we're not attached, then we don't get angry. So that's kind of the bedrock, and it's in common with every other human being, isn't it? Or any other being, really. I mean, it links us all together. We all recognise that one quality. So then the next topic that I chose to name was insight, meditation, and reflection on emptiness. This is something that we as Westerners pick out as being special to Buddhism. We don't get it in our Christian background. It's something new, it's something different, it's something that would be worth getting interested in Buddhism for. So most Western Buddhists, in my experience, myself included, was drawn because of the idea of becoming more aware and being able to understand the nature of my own mind. And if that's emptiness, okay, I want to understand emptiness, but basically I want to understand the nature of my own mind. So that involves reflection and meditation, and of course would involve some study, but the way I've laid it out, all those teachings that are involved in establishing the right view in order to gain liberation, I've kind of made that one area that people are likely to be interested in, going deeper, which corresponds to openness in the DHB, going deeper into that understanding. And the next one I chose to put together was practices that we can use in our everyday life. So keeping the precepts, following the 6 perfections of generosity and discipline and patience and energy and meditation and wisdom. These days I think people would think of mindfulness, practicing mindfulness, being aware of what you're doing in your life, the way you're communicating, the way you're behaving. And even if there weren't any future lives, that would just make your life this life better, wouldn't it? And for many Westerners, that's enough, like the compassion, practicing in your daily life, with some sort of deepening of understanding of emptiness. That's what makes me a Buddhist. I don't need this idea of enlightenment. I don't need the idea of past and future lives. I don't need this idea about samsara going on forever. And okay, I like the idea of refuge. I like the idea of taking bodhisattva vow because they feel good. It's a nice sentiment. But I don't have to believe it's actually possible for me personally to be protected by anything. I can just, I've got it all within myself, and I just don't need beliefs. I think many Westerners find that, they can go along with that without any problem. So I sort of draw a line there and think, okay, now we part company. We part company with those people who really don't want to go any further than that. And we step into the Buddhist world view. So I've called it I noticed in this booklet it's not called Vasta Vision anymore. I must have agreed to a second. It's now called Training in Understanding the Nature of Being. But I'm tempted to go back to Vasta Vision. Because the Buddha's teaching it's not just about this life. It's really about what causes us to be born in the first place, and what causes that to be suffering in the first place, and how, as long as those causes are in place, we will continue to suffer, and death isn't going to help. We're not going to just finish at death. We're going to continue as long as that process of ignorance, grasping, taking birth is happening moment by moment. It will happen from life to life, and there's no reason for that to ever end. So this is this is kind of really up the game, hasn't it? It's not so comfortable. It's sort of, now it's a bit radical and a bit more demanding. And do I believe that? Do I even understand that? How much of that do I want to take on board? So this is where I suppose I would say it requires more teaching, specifically Buddhist teaching, and maybe study programs and familiarity with the texts and the teachings and that's quite complex because what is it, 1,500 years of tradition there of Buddhist thinkers in different Indian languages, in Sanskrit, then translated into Tibetan, and then now translated into English. And does this word mean that, or does it mean that? Or some people say it means this, and some people say it means that. So you can get kind of, you could easily think, I don't really need all of that. So I was thinking to myself, so what of that do you really need in order to reach the goal of the Buddha's teaching, which is, you could say it's understanding, but it's actually because understanding will lead to the cessation of suffering, and not just make samsara a bit better and not so bad, but actually to cut through the whole samsaric cycle. I mean, it's really radical. It's really radical. It's not, it's not a sort of self-help, improving your life, which the first three areas do improve your life, and you do just only need yourself. So there's nothing wrong with that, but it's not going to solve the problem. You may lead a better life, but at any moment you might suddenly find yourself plunged into some situation you just can't cope with. And you can think, oh, well, Buddhism's let me down. Well, you didn't get the whole of it. And the whole of it is that, yes, that can happen. And why does it happen? It's a result of karmic things that we've done in the past, in past lives. It doesn't have to be this life. It could be so long ago that there's no way you could, you could track down where it came from. And it's very equalizing because we're all in the same position. It's not like, oh, well, if you look at our situation now and you can think, well, if I've got a good situation now, it must mean I've got good karma. And if you're in a bad situation now, it must mean you've got bad karma. Yes, in a sense, but it's only one thing that's ripening. It's only one thing that's come to fruition. So tomorrow, I might be the one that's really suffering, and you might be the one for whom everything's suddenly going perfectly. And that's true to life, isn't it? People seem to have everything and no problem, and then suddenly they have a suffering, an unimaginable suffering. You think, well, how did that happen? If you try to look for the cause in this life, it doesn't make any sense. It just seems totally random. So you think, oh, karma's cruel. Yes, it's cruel, but at least there's some sense of meaning to it. It's not just totally random. That sometimes our karma catches up with us and we have to work with that. So when our situation isn't too bad, like it isn't too bad now, then this is the time to work on it and to gain some sort of purchase on the path to awakening. Because the good news is, although karma is totally random, is ripening it, we don't know what's going to ripen next. There is actually a way out of suffering, an ultimate way out of suffering, out of the whole cycle. This is what the Buddha is offering us. And we can actually connect to, if you like, the world or the mandala of the Buddha. The Buddha can actually, in a way, protect us from the Buddha's side. So we're not completely on our own in this mess of karma that's just ripening all over the place and we don't know what's going to happen next. There is some stable presence in the universe of the compassionate power of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and those who've gained realization on the path to awakening. So you can just think, well, that sounds good, I think I'll believe that. So there's nothing against that, but then you might have doubt about it and think, well, how do I know that? And that's why it's good to really try to understand the Dharma, understand the Buddha's teaching as deeply as you can, because when you understand it deeply, you can understand how actually it might be true that there is this power in the universe to protect us and help us and keep us on the path to awakening, that actually becomes like coherent with and consistent and congruent with your whole worldview. If you have a very materialistic worldview, then there's no reason to think that there is anything that could protect you. So we need to look at our materialistic worldview and see, well, does that make sense? I'm believing in it. If you have a materialistic worldview, well, I just believe in what's the solid real world. I don't like to have these weird beliefs about Buddhas and things like that. Well, does your view of a solid world actually hold together? Is it in itself consistent? Do you really live as if that were true? And you might find there's all sorts of inconsistencies, and maybe you don't need to hold on to this materialistic view as if it's the only sensible interpretation of your experience in the universe. Maybe you could loosen up and start thinking about other worldviews, and especially the Buddhist worldview, or the worldview that the Buddha has or Buddhists have when they're thinking about the Buddhist teaching. And one of the things I think that really helps is to just allow yourself to consider the vastness of the Buddhist worldview. We have maybe a materialistic worldview, and we might think it's very vast because you think, well, there's all that space and all these little things floating around in space and doing all these amazing things that they can now send out, what do you call them, probes and things to examine what's going on in the universe, and you can look at the details of how the atomic and subatomic things are working. You can, we know so much detail now about this material world. It seems vast, but it's actually quite limited. There's so much detail that we know, and then there's a limit beyond which we can't know. It's just too far out. It goes, you don't find an edge to that limitless world. You don't find a sort of the final particle going inwards to the tiniest world. You just keep finding more and more and more and more details. And that's nothing compared with the vision that the Buddha would have, the Buddhist view of vastness, where that amount of vastness is in every point in the universe. Like when you think about a point, you think, oh, that's, smallest possible point. Yeah, we all get that. What's the smallest possible point? Yeah, got it. So how big is it? Well, it's the smallest point, so it must be very small, mustn't it? But how small is it? And then when you think about it, you think, well, hang on. If it had any dimensions at all, it would be more than one point, wouldn't it? So if it's only one point, it can't have any dimension. Fine, that's all right. It has no dimensions. So if it has no dimensions, why are we calling it small? Interesting, isn't it? From the Buddhist point of view, there's no reason to call it small. There's no... every point isn't small. You could say every point is all-pervading. Then suddenly everything turns on its head, doesn't it? Like, doesn't seem very material anymore, does it? Seems like weird. Which, it's not far off from what they're discovering about the universe, is it? But it is pretty weird. Buddha's got there first. You can't get weirder. But the thing is, it's not just weird, it's meaningful. Because even without being able to know that directly, we do have the capacity to work it out. We can sort of see. I mean, when I said that about the point, there was nothing about that you couldn't go along with, even if the significance of it eludes us. It's just like my ordinary thinking mind takes me to the smallest point. My ordinary thinking mind takes me to the, hang on, it has no size, and then my ordinary thinking mind can't manage anything more. It's like, I can't think without size. So what are we going to do? We're going to have to find another way of knowing, which takes us back, if you like, to the meditation. You know, it has to be experienced in meditation by dropping all your ordinary thinking. That's what emptiness is about. We have to get a good understanding of emptiness. But once you have an understanding, or even an interest in emptiness, then these teachings about the nature of the worldview, I think you'd have to say, the Buddhist worldview, you can somehow find a lot more space for that being possibly true. And certainly when it comes to living your life, there are ways that it's really helpful to have that sort of vast view. Because as long as your thinking is, you know, I've got this world that I know and I understand, and there's a lot of suffering and it's too much and it's terrible, and how can I put it all right, and I'm only just one person and I can't put it right and it's all too terrible, and it's just like, oh, too much. That's the effect of not having a vast view. Whereas with a vast view, it's not too much, because, and this is where there's various Buddhist teachings that we need to learn, we need to find out about. What is the Buddhist view about what is a person, what we are? And the view of a person in the Buddhist view is not that it's something that we're clinging on to, as this is myself, and you know, it's connected to my body or it's not connected to my body, but it's me, and it's somehow cut off from the rest of the universe. The Buddhist view is that it's not cut off, and as long as you think it is cut off, you're trying to hold on to something that's actually impermanent and changing, and is going to fall apart. So that if you could let that go and relax more into this emptiness or openness, this awareness that is fundamentally what we are, then actually its nature is love and compassion. And love and compassion have power. And we already experience that in our lives, don't we? Somebody with love and compassion is affecting the world around them all the time. It's not just a sentimental thing. I mean, sometimes people call it love, but it's just sentimental. But when it's really love, you can feel it. It's powerful. So then this openness, clarity, sensitivity of what we are, you could call it our Buddha nature. It's like it's what we always are. It doesn't change. So the teachings actually give us confidence that actually that could be true. And our experience gives us confidence, because the more we let go of our ways of thinking that we ourselves can see are harmful and not right, not accurate, not possible, don't make any sense, these qualities simply start to bubble up. The joy of love, the joy, the brightness of the awareness when you're not clinging on to things, when your mind is opening up, your heart is opening up. The sensitivity and the power that's there, the power of your presence, just your mere presence, starts to happen without you having to do an extra exercise. You let go, and then it all wells up. And because it's there, You can intuitively access it even before you've let go of clinging. And because it has a power from its own side, the genuineness of your love will actually cause you to let go of attachment, because your love is so genuine. So even without having to capture your attachment, analyze it and drop it, the power of your intuitive feelings of love and compassion naturally cause things to drop away and for the love to emerge. And why? Because it is your nature. That doesn't change. So this is a teaching, and you could say, well, I either believe it or I don't believe it. You look at what your choices are. So what are you going to believe instead? And they're not very good choices. What happens if I go along with that choice? And it starts to not just be a belief anymore. It's like when you read a map, you just believe the map. You only know it's right when you've got to the destination. So this idea of receiving teachings and thinking about things. Well, do we have Buddha nature? Do I have Buddha nature? What does it mean? What does the Buddha mean when he says that? What does he mean by these things that I cling on to are not myself? What does that really mean? What does it mean that if I don't let go of that cycle of grasping and clinging, lifetime after lifetime, I will have to suffer the effects of karma, and I don't even know what I've done. What's the effect of believing that? You actually find it has all sorts of effects that you recognize as genuine. You're not just believing it. You're actually coming to the point where you really can understand that. But all this needs to be taught. So the point, I was saying that after the first 3 sections, you then get into the real Buddhist bit, which sounds like, oh, now it's about a whole lot of beliefs and things like that. But there's a purpose for it. If we're going to go beyond that whole cycle of birth and death and suffering the effects of karma, we're going to have to make a stand. We're going to have to make a decision what our worldview is. So that's the point of all these Buddhist teachings. You could say, well, you could still recognize your openness, clarity, sensitivity through your own practice without having all these different teachings, and you think of them as theories and ideas that you're supposed to believe in. Well, you can try it. You can try it. Why not? It's not easy. Life's tough. And at some point, it might just kind of dawn on you. Actually, it's good to listen to these teachings and to try to apply them and understand them. And one of the consequences of this worldview is that this life that we have now is very special. We may not think our life is that special. It seems to us that we're born at a very bad time when everything's going wrong and the planet is really under threat. And you name it, it's going wrong. If not for us, it's going wrong for millions of other people. So this doesn't seem like a good time. But from the Buddhist point of view, a time and place like this, where we have the opportunity to listen to teachings about this worldview of the Buddha's teaching, receive instruction on how to meditate and practice, meeting teachers at all, even hearing about the Dharma at all, in terms of the bigger picture, is very rare, very difficult to come by. And once you have come by it, then if you take advantage of that and you apply the teachings and you commit yourself to the path to awakening, then your chances of continuing on that path are very high. So you don't need to think, well, there's not much chance for me because I'm not a very good Buddhist. The fact that you've made this connection, means that you have actually increased your chances of staying on the path very, very, considerably. Because even to get this far is difficult. You imagine you're trying to hook an insect out of it's drowning in a pool of water, and you're trying to get it out, and you kind of get it so far, and then it's just out, and you think, don't drop back in, don't drop back in, I've just got you out, don't drop back in. And then we're rather like that. The Buddhas have sort of got this far, they've made this connection with us, come on, come on, take off, let your wings dry out so you can fly off, come on. So they're cheering us on, you could think of it like that. Even though we're hanging on by, I'm feeling very wet and drowned. Hang on in there. But this is the reason why there's the next section in this book, where it talks about pranidhanas, and that's what I was supposed to be talking about today before I changed my mind. But in order to understand the importance of pranidhanas, you need to have this world view that, you can see there's this terrible thing of we keep being reborn again and again, and karma might ripen at any time, and it's very dangerous and very unsafe. What can we do? We need to follow the path to awakening. If we waken up out of this nightmare, we can realize that actually our true nature is openness, clarity, sensitivity, always was. There never was a problem. It's just a kind of funny little thing that's going on, like you have a funny little thought passing by, it doesn't matter. Samsara could be as trivial as that, but we're caught up in it, and it's all very real. I forgot where I was going, but I was going towards the pranidhanas, that in the midst of all that, what's driving it, that's where I was going, what's driving that whole cycle of samsara is our volition. What created the karma in the first place was our volition, what we chose, and we chose badly at some point. We chose not to recognize our true nature. How that happened is very mysterious, because how can something so amazing as our Buddha nature choose to not recognize itself? How could that happen? And I always feel this is where trying to explain everything starts to break down, because that's very difficult to realize and to understand, mainly because we've forgotten. In a way, this not recognizing our own nature is like forgetting our own nature and then becoming afraid of it, and then grasping on to something else as real, which isn't real, and then that continues the whole cycle of samsara. So the way out is, again, going back to the beginning, what we choose. You may not know what you are, but you know you can choose. It's interesting, that, isn't it? You can choose. That's you. You're the one that chooses. You choose. It's your volition. It's your power of intention. I'm going to choose. I'm going to choose to ignore that. I'm going to choose to follow that. I choose to give in to my habitual patterns, or I choose not to. Sometimes we feel so overwhelmed we don't realize that we're choosing to be overwhelmed. We don't have to be overwhelmed. We choose it. Oh, this is too much. Oh, I'm going to choose to be very upset and overwhelmed. Or you could actually, I'm not going to be upset and overwhelmed. Why should I? It's thinking. It's your choice, actually. Your thinkings don't think you. You choose to let them dominate you. It may sound a very cruel thing to say, because we can't escape that domination, can we? But it is actually true. It's all driven by choosing, volition. And the same applies, this is why pranidhanas are the most important thing of all, really. You could say love is important, but love without the power of pranidhana is going to be quickly overwhelmed. But love combined with pranidhana, which I'll explain in a moment, it just has no limit. So when we say pranidhana, in Tibetan that's munlam. And for many Tibetans, I think, when they talk about Dharma practice, they would think first of munlam, of, that's what they do. Let's do some Dharma practice. They start chanting something. And what they're chanting is some special formulation of a very strong intention and wish that is going to benefit themselves and all beings. So, if I wish all beings to be happy, and then if I go on, and then I add to that, may I always in all my lifetimes be able to work to help others to be happy, or may in all my lifetimes I will be able to be happy and bring happiness to others. You're making a very strong wish and intention, and you have the power to do it. This is your greatest power. So I am talking about pranidhana after all. Yeah. But then why should that be the case? Why should it be that we have this power to make things happen, or direct we can direct the way our life goes? Because of karma from the past and our choices from the past, we don't always see the pranidhana coming to fruition immediately. But whenever we have a volition, everything that we do is directing that towards that aim, isn't it? So if I really want a cup of tea, I probably don't need to think much more about it. I will find myself in the kitchen making myself a cup of tea, even without thinking about it, because I've often wanted a cup of tea and I have formulated that wish for a cup of tea, and somehow all the conditions for bringing the tea together are very easily accessible, and I produce a cup of tea. It's a good example, isn't it? Like, I have a wish for something, and I only have to wish it, and there it is. You say, oh, well, there were many things involved in that. Yes, there were, but you didn't have to think about them because the conditions were already there, because you'd often wished for you've often wished for a cup of tea. So the milk is there, the tea bags are there, the water's there. So you just think a cup of tea, and it sort of happens. But that happens long term as well. So if you think, what I want to do with my life is, if I want to be successful and have lots of money, you will find yourself time and again involved with this whole idea of success and money. You're stuck in it, you're trapped in it. Sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not there, depending on your karma. But your mind is always stuck in this trying to get money. It's never enough, you're always trying to get money. Whereas if your aim in life is, I want to live in the way I want to die. I want to die with my mind focused on enlightenment and the benefit of all beings. That's how I want to live, that's how I want to die, that is my aim. And that is always your aim. Everything in your life will be heading in that direction. You'll naturally gather the right conditions, and that your life will tend in that direction. So you can do that. And you can think, yeah, but I often make wishes and then I find it's sort of drifted off. Yeah, that's the trouble. What happens is we have more than one wish. Like, I want to be rich and have a good status, and I want a nice house, and I want a nice partner, and I've got this whole vision of what I would like. Then I know that that's actually impermanent, and someday I've got to die. So what's more important is enlightenment. So yes, I really wish to get to follow the path to enlightenment. So now we have to sort of think about a life choice, and that does cost a lot of money, but I do really like it, so I think I'll go there. Oh, I've got no time now, no money to go to Dharma courses or teachings or to go retreat. How did that happen? If you really wanted this, how did you make this choice that took you there? You had conflicting wishes, don't you? Bhikshun Shikpa uses the one of, you want to lose weight and you want to eat cake. So, which one's going to win? So that's why it's important to really think about what you really want, and for the overall plan for where your life's going, really concentrate on that and be prepared to make the sacrifices that are necessary. Because if you think, well, I'm not going to give up cake, and you keep trying to lose weight, well, we all know what happens. So, which is it? If you want to eat cake, don't cause yourself the suffering of trying to lose weight. Just eat cake and enjoy it. And they say, but I don't enjoy it because I want to lose weight. Okay, well, if you want to lose weight, enjoy losing weight, and if you want to lose weight really, then obviously you're not going to eat cake, You have to make that, you could say it's a sacrifice, but it isn't really a sacrifice because you're actually going in the direction you want to go. You're being consistent, you're being congruent, you're being clear, you're being sensitive, you're being honest, you're being, all this. You have all these qualities. You can draw on them. Everybody has these qualities. You can draw on them, but you have to have it pointed out to you that you can't have both. That lovely expression, you can't have your cake and eat it. If I eat it, I won't have it for later. But I want it now. Then you won't have it later. But I want it later. So we have to have a lot of clarity when we're making these, we're forming our intentions. It's really important to form them with clarity, and it's worth giving time to that. And in fact, it's worth giving time to that until you're clear, because once you're clear, there's no stopping you. Whereas if you don't think about it clearly enough and you just go, you might end up where you didn't want to be. And so you might have got there very fast and it may look very successful, but you didn't want to be there. So what was the point? So there's this very strong connection between understanding, even on an ordinary level, the power of intention, but even more so on the level of the vaster vision. Because under the same heading as the pranidhanas is taking vows or making commitments. And one of our difficulties often is that we don't make commitments, we don't commit ourselves to what we really want. We don't think about it clearly enough, we don't commit ourselves to it clearly enough. So that even quite a trivial thing can stop us doing what we want because we didn't make a clear enough intention. And typically we may say, okay, I want to meditate every day for half an hour, whatever it is, but we don't make a firm commitment, we don't make that space in the day, we don't say, okay, every morning at 7 o'clock I'm going to do half an hour's meditation, come what may. Okay, sometimes you can't, but that's your commitment and you keep to it, and then you do every day. But if you say, well, I could do it any time, I could do it any time of day, I don't have to do it at the same time every day. And you watch what happens. Almost always you find you've done all and everything but your meditation. And yet that's what you wanted to do. So it was your lack of commitment, and we have that power to make a commitment. And in the Buddhist worldview, the most important commitment we can make is to the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha. The enlightened, the awakened ones, their teaching, what they're teaching, or what they've realised that we can realise, and then those who are following that path that we can meet and we can go along with. So these are the three jewels. Those the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. We could actually commit ourselves to devoting our lives to following, and we call it taking refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha. And you can actually do that formally. Your commitment is recognised by the universe, if you like. Okay, she's done it. She's taken that, she's made that commitment. So we can, in a way now, we can protect in a very special way. When she starts to kind of waver or starts to kind of lose her commitment or get obstacles, so we can actually hold the situation for her and make it easier for her to get back on track. So it's like entering a mandala, entering a world that's centered on awakening, and you're getting into the slipstream of it, as it were. That's where everybody's going. You're joining in with everybody. There's a power in that of everybody going together. So you can actually make a commitment. I take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. When we started, we said we take refuge in all the Buddhas. We didn't mention the Dharma and Sangha, but we meant it. Like the Buddhas are the awakened ones, and the awakened one, wherever there's an awakened one, there's going to be the Dharma, and there's going to be the Sangha. There's going to be those people who are learning from the awakened one. So if we're taking refuge in the Buddha, then the teachings and the Sangha will be there. So you can shorten it to all the Buddhas. So that's, again, the power of our intention, and we actually then take birth as a being who has made that commitment and committed to taking the precepts, like committed to not killing, committed to not stealing, committed to not harming others through sexual behaviour, committed to not taking intoxicants so that we're out of control and can't control our behaviour. I've missed one out. Which one? Lying, wasn't it? We're committed to truthfulness. So you take the precepts, and when you've taken the precept, then you have, in a way, you've taken birth in that world where you don't do those things. And there's tremendous power in that. Once you've taken that formally, whenever you get near the edge of, like, should I kill those insects or not? It's not going to be, you're not going to do it lightly. You're going to kind of, it's the only way I can not kill them. It's the only way I can protect them. And you'll feel that, your whole being will feel that. There's a reason for that, because of our worldview, if you like. It's not, you could say, it's just a kind of conditioning or something like that. But it's more meaningful than that. It's actually, we have become a person who doesn't do that. It's like the idea of the cat who is so full and fat and lazy it doesn't catch mice. But a mouse would have to be careful, because if it got hungry it would. But a cat that never did eat mice on principle, you can trust that cat, even if it's hungry. And we're the same. If we're keeping those precepts on principle, there's so much more power in them. And this is actually quite fundamental to the Buddha's teaching, that there's power in our actions, there's power in our intention, there's power in our words, and there's power in our actions. And we need to learn this. It's not always immediately obvious. And the power of our word is one of the other aspects of making a vow or a pranidhana. If you always keep your word, when you give your word, it's powerful in all sorts of ways. And from the Buddhist point of view, it's what creates the enlightened world. Is the bodhisattva who always keeps their word, say, I'm going to create a world where beings can come and live and be happy and learn the Dharma. They will actually achieve what they say they will do, because they always keep their word. So from the moment we decide, okay, I'm not going to take the precept against lying, it means I'm going to develop the power of my word, so that whenever I say something, people can rely on it. The universe can rely on it. I will do what I said I'll do. So I've taken refuge in the Buddha and Dharma and Sangha. I will keep the 5 precepts, and you will, because that's what you do. That's you. You have the power of your intention. And what happens if somebody doesn't keep their word? They weaken their own being. They weaken their own power. Because now, even they don't know. If I say I'll do it, I don't know if I will or not. So how are you going to operate now? It's very serious not to keep your word. Your word is very closely aligned with intention and the power of pranidhana and the power to transform samsara into nirvana, transform samsara into nirvana doesn't make any sense, because nirvana never changes and samsara never is really there. But from the deluded point of view, it looks like a transformation, because samsara, when we awaken, samsara disappears. It's no longer appearing to us, and there is only what was always there, which is our true nature of openness, clarity, sensitivity. It's, you could say, the power of love and compassion. And because that's true, we can take the bodhisattva vow. So again, the taking of the commitment of vow of a bodhisattva is so closely connected to one's worldview. If you actually recognize that all beings actually, in essence, are openness, clarity, sensitivity, they are actually pure, but confused, remove the confusion, and they're Buddhas. And because of the power of compassion, and because of the power that beings have in terms of their intention, they can actually wish to awaken. And through the power of the compassion of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, they can awaken. They can be supported in that, and they can awaken. So it makes sense for a Bodhisattva to say, I vow to work for the benefit of beings until all beings reach enlightenment. It actually makes sense, because they're not going anywhere. They are this essential nature of openness, clarity, sensitivity. You could say the Buddha nature. They are that. That doesn't change, doesn't go anywhere. So they're always going to be there, not going anywhere. So what am I going to do? Well, I can, seeing other beings who haven't got there yet, I can work for their benefit, because I'm not going anywhere. And they're always going to be there, and I'm going to have love and compassion for them. I'm going to help them to reach enlightenment. That's what I'm going to do. I can choose to do that. We have that power. And it's very inspiring, isn't it? Wouldn't it be wonderful to have that power? So wouldn't it be wonderful to understand the Buddha's teaching? Wouldn't it be wonderful to study and reflect and think about the Buddha's teaching, so that that would become real for me, and that I could actually then see the world like that? That could be my worldview. I could make pranidhanas with conviction, without any doubt, without any hesitation, without wanting to, have my cake and eat it. I'm just going for that one thing. If I could do that, I'd be made, wouldn't I? There'd be no room for any regret or any unhappiness. You could have that attitude as you live, as you die. That's you. Don't need to analyse it further, really, do you? Nonetheless, in the Buddhist teachings, there's a lot of analysis. There's a lot of analysis, because the reason why that view of who I am, what my power is, kind of intuitively is satisfying, the very next moment it isn't how I'm thinking. It's not stable, is it? It's like all the other patterns of thinking that we've developed over how many lifetimes, then nobody knows. They're still there. So there's all sorts of practices that we can do that help to draw our attention to those assumptions, those underlying assumptions that make us forget that moment of inspiration, Oh, it's gone. What was it? So how do we learn to not forget? So you could say, well, that's what mindfulness is about. But what inspires us to be more mindful of the need to practice mindfulness is to look at the different teachings of the Buddha. And you can look at the ones that dismantle our wrong ways of thinking, or you can look at teachings that kind of inspire us to believe that actually we do have that potential. And one of the things that we can read that can inspire us is the life stories of great practitioners of the past. And it's really important the way we read stories of practitioners of the past. I think as Westerners, we tend to read stories, we tend to hear teachings and read stories as telling us, this is how you should be now, and if you're not, you're a bit of a failure. We tend to read things like that, and then we read about somebody who's a bit of a failure, and we think that's a better story because, it makes me cheer up because I'm not the worst. Which is very, not a very helpful way of going about it. Because if you read a story of somebody who has achieved realization, you read the life of the Buddha and you think about it, you think, wow, gosh, I don't know if I could do that. Okay, you can think that, but you can think, but the very fact that I'm reading this story and it's inspiring me is actually increasing my power to wish for that for myself and others. So actually rejoicing in the good and the realization and the high achievement of others on the spiritual path directly affects your power to wish for it and to follow it through. And they say you make punya by rejoicing in the spiritual achievements of others. So instead of listening to other people and thinking they're better than you and that makes you bad, you can think you're listening to others and they're better than you. Wow, that's an easy way for me to gain those qualities. It makes sense, doesn't it? How do I gain those sort of qualities? The first thing I have to do is to admire them and wish for them. So it doesn't matter if you exaggerate them even, if it's helping you to aspire higher. So somebody may appear good, and you don't know if they're really that good or not, but you just wish they were that good, and you wished you could follow in their example and become that good too. Again, this is our worldview, isn't it? If our worldview is that has power, why not do it? We can always do that, can't we? We can always think of really good people and think, oh wow, that's how I want to be. And then you can make a pranidhana and think, not only that, I'm making a pranidhana that in all my future lives I'll have a connection with that person and we can work together to bring all beings to awakening. Yes, that's another one. You can really make connections with good people and people's good qualities. Just thinking about the good qualities all the time. Not, oh, that makes me bad. Just, you might notice you don't have those good qualities, they're not showing, but you can wish for them, which means you have the potential. They can be awakened in you by thinking about them and hearing about them and reading about them and enjoying stories about them. So there you are, there's a gift of a practice, isn't it? There's a gift. You can sit and read stories and just from time to time remember, oh wow, just kind of admire it and feel that's how I would like to be, that's how I wish others could be. Thinking about those good qualities. So again, you could say psychologically you could have come to that conclusion anyway. It's kind of almost common sense. But when you have the Buddhist worldview, you realize this is a genuine practice. And there's this wonderful sutra, at the end of the Avatamsaka Sutra, the Gandhavyuha, where Sudana, it's mentioned in our feast puja, isn't it? We talk Sudana. It's mentioned in the Bodhicharya Avatara part, but he follows his spiritual teachers. I think he has about 56, And each time he hears about the qualities of the teacher, and he thinks that's just amazing. And then he goes and finds the teacher, and the teacher says, well, yes, I have all these wonderful qualities, but, nothing compared with, and they name another teacher, you should see his qualities. And then they're listed pages and pages of these wonderful qualities that they're able to emanate so many times in so many worlds to help so many different kinds of beings, and they've got so much wisdom, so much compassion, so much power, some miraculous powers, and it goes on and on and on and on until you almost can't bear it. It's like too much. And then the next one is even more. Well, you suppose it's more, but you can't remember all the qualities of the one before. But anyway, he goes on and on and on, page after page after page. It's a great thick book. And then he arrives at the end of finally he meets Maitreya. And at that stage, he has become like these teachers that he has admired. And it doesn't say he did anything else. Does it? It doesn't mention that he did anything else. So there's a dream of a practice, isn't there? So from that you can, just mention the sutra, the Avatamsaka Sutra, like reading sutras, reading life stories, reading teachings, just listening to teachings, kind of immersing yourself in the Buddhist worldview. It takes things up to a whole different level from the first part, where you're just kind of practicing in order to lead a good life. You now entered into this whole different worldview of where everything's possible, where you can take refuge in the Buddha Dharma Sangha, you can take the Bodhisattva vow, you can make pranidhanas and just admire all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, and by that means make the connections that actually bring you to the state where you can step out of samsara, almost by the power of your having connected to your good qualities. The negativity just falls away. Or you could analyze the negativity and notice it's wrong and let it go. You can do it from both sides. See how false the negativity is and let it go. See how powerful and wonderful the good qualities are and just admire them until they just blow the negative qualities, negative attitudes just fall away naturally. So it's a two-pronged approach. And all the teachings of the Buddha belong to that two-pronged approach. Like sometimes they call it gathering punya and clearing away veils. So to gathering punya by connecting to everything that's good and clearing away the clouds of confusion. Well, gathering the punya is actually helping to do that, but then clearing away your confusion is helping you to gather the punya. They're working together, aren't they? If you're too confused, you don't believe in the punya. So then it's difficult to accumulate it. Whereas actually, if you remove the veils, the punya accumulates anyway, naturally. Sometimes punya is translated as merit, but that doesn't quite do it justice. It's more like the power of goodness of our Buddha nature that is able to manifest itself. So the more we connect to that, the more powerful our intention is. It empowers our intention, it empowers our pranidhanas. So it propels us to our aim. So if we're very clear about our aim and we're just committed to it, we have the power to attain that. So that sounds pretty good, doesn't it? Does anyone want to ask anything?
I want to ask about, you're talking about having the intention, having the wish, and then you said something about conditions, and it's not always that conditions are there, but the way you spoke, if felt like the conditions would be there.
They will, but maybe not immediately. So you have to keep making the intention and the wish. And sometimes the karmic conditions are not there. Some sort of karmic, something's ripening. That, it's going to ripen then, whatever you do. But when that result has played itself out, you will find that the conditions that you brought together by your pranidhana will be there. That's how it's taught. And it makes sense, doesn't it? Why not believe it? Yeah.
Maybe you think I could also wish for the things that could be obstructing that too.
Yeah. Wish for them to be dispelled, and wish the conditions to come together. Yeah. And then you just have to see it's like the weather, isn't it? Sometimes it's a bit unpredictable when it's going to do what. But if you set things in motion, they will actually come together eventually. And you've done the best thing you could do in the meantime. Yeah. A stunned silence.
So what about the Samantabhadra pranidhana? Are you going to say anything about that?
Samantabhadra pranidhana.
Yes.
What would you like me to say about it?
Well, I don't know. I'd like to hear about it.
All right.
But isn't that a very particular form of what you're saying?
It is an example.
Special.
Yeah, I mean, it's supposed to be the pranidhana that covers, of all the bodhisattvas, each bodhisattva has a special quality. And they say about the bodhisattva Samantabhadra that his special quality is to make the best of all pranidhanas. The one that covers the most eventualities, that actually guarantees the best result. And it's been proved because he's, reached enlightenment through the power of that pranidhana. It's very interesting whether the Samantabhadra of the bodhisattva, whether that is actually the Samantabhadra it's the Buddha, that in the Dzogchen tradition we talk about Samantabhadra as the primordial Buddha, don't we? But in the Avatamsika he's said to be a bodhisattva, but the description of him as a bodhisattva is amazing. Yes, if you really want to be amazed to the point of you can't be more amazed, so shut up. But I'm not going to say shut up, I'm going to just let myself be more amazed. It's in the Gandhavyuha. Yes, you could read the Gandhavyuha. But what we recite actually quite regularly, we recite it on full moon days, don't we? Or other times we recite it when we want to do things for people who've died, because it's how could you say it in short and not spend the rest of the afternoon talking about it? It talks about all the different conditions that are necessary in order for us to, and all beings if you like, to reach enlightenment. So we all need to meet Buddhas and receive teaching, and when we meet Buddhas and receive teaching, we need to have the right attitude. So we need to kind of come with, willing to give and honour them in whatever way we can. So then we make this pranidhana. May I be able to honour all the Buddhas with endless offerings and receive their teachings and practice in the way that they're telling me to practice, and achieve all the things that are needed to be achieved. And may I bring other beings into this these practices, and may I meet the teachers again and again, and may I meet the people who are practicing again and again, and may we all work in harmony with each other. So, and anything you can think of that might be needed, or may all the negative things be cleared away. May I practice the 6 paramitas, and it goes on and on. But it also is vast in its vision. It talks about the like not only will I make offerings to all the Buddhas in all the I take refuge in all the Buddhas. I make offerings to all the Buddhas. But in every point in space, there are as many Buddhas as there are points in space. And in front of all of them, I will make these offerings. It's kind of like, wow, you can't, something opens up, doesn't it? Because it's like, I can't think that, but in a funny way I can. Actually, how can that be true? But then how could it not be true? It's like really, I always think it's like going towards non-conceptuality by blowing your mind. You can't conceive of it, and yet almost you can't honestly say you can't. Because you can always conceive of more and greater. So you are conceiving of it, but you can't. It's the same as going small, isn't it? You can go smaller and smaller to a point that I can't conceive of it smaller, but I can, because I know it would have no dimensions. And then I could actually let go into something quite different. So the Samantabhadacharya Pranidhana has that effect on my mind. It's very powerful. It's very powerful when you're reading it to notice your resistance to it. Oh, that's too much, I can't think that. You think, actually, that's not true. And even if you've read it, what I find, even when I've read it, and I've been quite tired and quite sleepy and thinking, I'm not really thinking this, when I put it down at the end, I think, but my mind has really changed. It's really changed from where it was before when I picked it up. How many of you are familiar with the Samantabhadacharya Pranidhana? Who's never heard of it? So quite a few of you. So there you are. That's something to look forward to. Yeah, I think it cuts through small thinking. Small-mindedness. You just read it, and then it says at the end, even just to hear it, even just to touch it, even just to have a connection with it, is, what does it say about that?
Born in the pure arms of Amata.
How many times have I read it and now I can't remember? I know if you rejoice, I know if when you hear it, you rejoice even for a moment, you make more punya than somebody who makes endless offerings to Buddhas through endless kalpas. Because assuming that when you're making that, just making the offerings without having that faith is not worth as much as one moment of faith in the vision of the pranidhana. And then, must be that it's annoying me. Doesn't matter which one. It's annoying me what it says. It's in section D, and it begins page 6, and it goes through to
Lama.
Yeah.
It's 4:45, and so if you'd like us to do it, we would just have time. We'd go over by like a...
Who's up for us reading it? Yeah. Okay, I was hoping someone would say that. Oh yeah. The Buddhas know the full effect when the karmic result ripens of someone taking hold of this text of the Samantabhadra Pranidhana, showing it to another or reading it. Okay, so it doesn't say what the effects are, that's why I don't remember. It just says the Buddha knows. I don't feel so bad now. The Buddha knows the full effect of the karmic, of just taking hold of it or reading it. So if we're all happy to read it, you can all be familiarised.
It's D6 for anybody who's not sure. It's D6. D for dolphin. Dragon. Dharma, yes.
So there you are, Alex. You've been the condition that got us all to read the Samantabhadra. Okay, salutations to the ever-youthful Manjushri. I make reverent salutations with body, speech and mind to all the great lions of Buddhas. I make obeisance to them all without exception, in the past, present and future, in every realm of existence, in all the 10 directions. By the power of the Samantabhadra Pranidhana, I make reverent salutations, thinking the Buddhas are before me, as I emanate bodies as countless as atoms in the Buddha realms, prostrating before each one of them, thinking that each and every atom throughout the Dhamma Dhatu, endless as the reaches of the sky, is filled with Buddhas, limitless in number as atoms surrounded by their bodhisattvas. Each of my limitless bodies praises all the Sugatas with exhaustless oceans of praise, and the sounds of all the perfect components of song, expressing in full all the immeasurable qualities of the Buddhas. I offer in veneration to all the Buddhas flowers, garlands, melodious music, fragrant oils and canopies of jewels, lights and aromatic incense, all of the most exquisite kind. Again and again I offer in veneration to all the Buddhas the best and finest garments, perfumes and incense in abundance, piled as high as Mount Meru and tastefully arranged. Furthermore, in my mind I make the most supreme and vast of offerings to all the Buddhas. Thus, through the power of faith in the Bhattacharya, I venerate and make offerings to all the Buddhas. I repent each and every one of all the unwholesome actions I have committed with my body, speech, and likewise mind, under the influence of attachment, hostility, and misguidedness. I rejoice in all the punya of all the Buddhas of the 10 directions, and of the Buddhas lineage bearers, the Bodhisattvas, of Pratyeka Buddhas and Arhats trained and training, as well as of all other beings, before each of the lamps of the world in the 10 directions, who have proceeded through all the stages up to Buddhahood. I entreat these Lord Protectors to turn the wheel of the unsurpassable Dharma. With hands folded in reverence, I entreat those Buddhas wishing to show the passing into Nirvana, to remain for a further duration of kalpas as numerous as atoms, for the benefit and happiness of beings. Whatever trace of punya I have accumulated by my obeisance, offering repentance, rejoicing in virtue, and entreaty for the turning of the Dharma wheel and for Buddhas to remain in the world, I dedicate it to the supreme enlightenment of beings. May offerings be made in reverence to the Buddhas of the past and those of the present in the worlds of the 10 directions. May those Buddhas to be proceeding towards enlightenment quickly consummate all their wishes on the path and become Buddhas. May all the realms that there are in the 10 directions become extensive and perfectly pure, and each whole realm become utterly filled with Buddhas, each taking his place beneath his mighty Bodhi tree, and surrounded by his lineage bearers, the Bodhisattvas. May all beings in the 10 directions be free from suffering and enjoy uninterrupted happiness forever. May favorable conditions arise for all the wishes of beings that are accord with the Dharma to be fulfilled, and for them to realize their aspiration towards Buddhahood. May I remember the Bodhicharya that I am practicing now, wherever I am born in all my future lifetimes. Throughout all my lifetimes as I pass from death to rebirth, may I each time renew again my vow to live the life of renunciation, following the manner of training of all the Buddhas. May I perfectly complete the Vajracharya. May my Shila be free from the stain of the kleshas, completely pure of any selfish aspiration, unbroken by misconduct and faultless free from the Trimandala. May I expound the Dharma to all beings in their own language, such as the languages of gods, nagas and demons, and in as many human and non-human languages as there are. Thus may I practice the 6 paramitas with perfect virya and never forget the bodhicitta. May all beings, actions and obscurations without exception be eradicated. Having become free from the maras of karma and kleshas, as I continue to be born in the world as whatever kind of being, may I be like the lotus to which water cannot cling, acting like the sun and moon who remain steadfast and unimpeded in their course through the sky, throughout the vastness of all the realms extending in every direction. May I relieve the suffering of the beings in the lower realms, establishing them in happiness and acting for their benefit. Having perfectly completed the Bodhicharya, may I harmonize with the Charya of different kinds of beings, teaching them perfectly the Vajracharya, and maintaining that Charya through all future kalpas. May I always join those performing the same Charya as myself, and may react to that Acharya of body, speech and mind, and our pranidhanas be in unison. May I always meet and never expel from my mind those companions who wish to help me, the genuine teachers of the Vajracharya. May I always see all the Buddhas face to face, the Lord Protectors surrounded by their hosts of bodhisattvas. May I venerate and make profuse offerings to them all, tirelessly in person for all future kalpas. May I uphold the supreme Dharma of all the Buddhas, and cause the Bodhicharya to appear everywhere. Having mastered the Vajracharya, may I continue to perform it for all future kalpas. In all my existences in samsara, may I obtain an exhaustive supply of punya and jhana, and may upaya, prajna and samadhi in moksha and all good qualities become an eternal and exhaustive treasury. May I be able to see in a single atom Buddha realms numerous as atoms, and then in each of these Buddha realms Buddhas in number beyond conception, and each Buddha seated in the midst of his vast assembly of bodhisattvas. Seeing all these, may I be able to perform in their presence the Bodhicharya. Since every atom is filled like this, the space of a mere hairpin is filled with as many Buddhas as there are in all the past, present and future. I pray I may be able to perform the Bodhicharya before these endless Buddhas in their endless Buddha realms for endless kalpas. May I always be able to hear the teaching of the Buddhas in the pure voice of all the Buddhas that in a single utterance encompasses perfectly every form of expression and language, perfectly attuned to the mentality of every kind of being. As the wheel of the Dhamma is set in motion by the Buddhas of the past, present and future, may I have the strength of intelligence to perfectly understand their inexhaustible teachings. May I enter all future kalpas. May I enter them all in a single instant. May I make all the kalpas of the 3 times enter a fraction of a second and perform within them the bodhicharya. May I see in a single instant all the great lions, the Buddhas, dwelling in the past, present and future. May I always be able to enter the sphere of their charya by the magical power of illusory vimokshas. May I make all the Buddhas of the 3 times appear arranged within a single atom, and display all the Buddha realms arranged like this within every atom, everywhere, in every direction. May I manifest before all the Lord Protectors, the lamps of the world who have yet to come, on their progress to enlightenment as they turn the wheel of the Dhamma, and as they show the way to the ultimate peace of Nirvana. By the power of miracles, strict and all-embracing, by the power of the universal gateway, the Mahayana, by the power of the all-good qualities of the Vajracharya, by the power of all-pervading love, by the power of punya from all wholesome states and actions, by the power of unobstructed jnana, by the power of prajna and samadhi, may I complete all the powers of enlightenment. May I be able to purify completely the forces of bad karma, crush the forces of the kleshas, and render the forces of Mara completely powerless. Thus may I perfect and complete the power of the Vajracharya. May I purify endless oceans of worlds, liberate endless oceans of beings, reveal endless oceans of dhammas, meditate on endless oceans of jhana, purify endless oceans of charya, complete endless oceans of pranidhanas, make offerings to endless oceans of Buddhas, tirelessly continuing this charya for endless oceans of kalpas. Having reached Buddhahood by means of practicing the Vajracharya, may I bring to perfect fulfillment each and every one of the multitude of pranidhanas of the Bodhicharya made by the Buddhas of the 3 times. I dedicate all these Kushala Mula to the end that I might match the skill of the Charya of the one and by the name Samantabhadra, the most powerful of all the Buddhas, lineage bearers of Bodhisattvas, having the purity of his body, speech and mind, the purity of his charya and the complete purity of his pure realms. May I also match exactly the goodness and skill of his dedication. May I make the same pranidhana as Manjushri, in order to carry out the totally good charya, perfecting and completing all his deeds tirelessly for all future kalpas. May my charya be beyond measure and its qualities beyond reckoning. May this steadfast, measureless charya sweep away every trace of confusion. Just as space extends without limits, beings, karma, and kleshas extend without limits. Therefore may this my pranidhana extend without limit, for as long as beings, karma, and kleshas last. If someone were to offer up to all the Buddhas limitless Buddha realms adorned with precious jewels, filling the 10 directions, even if they contained the most precious possessions of gods and humans, and were offered continuously for kalpas as countless as atoms, the punya deriving therefrom would be exceeded by a person who only once gives rise to faith and rejoices in supreme bodhi through hearing this king of pranidhanas. Whoever recites this pranidhana will avoid rebirth in the lower realms, will avoid meeting bad friends, will quickly see Amitabha, will always find all they need, always be happy, will achieve their purpose in this very life and quickly become like Samantabhadra. By reciting the Vajracharya pranidhana, a person who has committed any of the 5 most heinous crimes, due to their ignorance in the past, will be quickly purified. In future lives they will be born with jnana, perfect body, family and complexion, The multitude of Maras and heretics will have no power over them, and they will be venerated by beings of all three realms. Finally, they will quickly arrive under the mighty Bodhi tree, remaining steadfast for the benefit of beings, gaining enlightenment, turning the wheel of the Dhamma, and subduing Mara and his armies. The Buddhas know the full effect when the karmic result ripens of someone taking hold of this text of the Samanta Bhattacharya Pranidhana, showing it to another or reading it. There is no need to doubt those who have supreme enlightenment. I dedicate this punya so that I may train to follow the example of the precise knowledge and courage of Manjushri, and of Samanta Bhadra and all the Bodhisattvas who train like them. In the manner of dedication praised by all the Buddhas of the three times, I dedicate completely all my Kushala Mula from making this pranidhana to the Bhattacharya. By means of this punya, I pray that when I die, all my veils will be purified and cleared away, that I will see Amitabha face to face and go to Sukhavati. Once I have arrived, the benefits of this pranidhana, all without exception, be actualized. With my heart overflowing with the meaning and purpose of this pranidhana, may I benefit beings for as long as samsara lasts. There in the all-good and blissful realm of the Buddha Mandala, may I take birth from an exquisitely beautiful lotus flower. Then on beholding Amitabha, the Buddha of limitless eyes face to face, may I receive from him the Vyakarana. Having received the Vyakarana by the power of the Bodhicitta, may I emanate countless times in the worlds of the 10 directions, benefiting beings in countless ways endlessly for as long as samsara lasts. By whatever small portion of Kushala Mula accumulated from the mere reciting of this pranidhana of the Bhattacharya, may all the pure and virtuous pranidhanas of beings be immediately fulfilled. By means of the supreme and limitless punya arising from this complete dedication of the Bhattacharya, may all beings floundering in the great river of suffering be safely delivered to Amitabha's paradise. By this, the supreme and principal king of pranidhanas, for the benefit of limitless beings, the authoritative textual source of pranidhanas, beautifully laid out by Samanta Bhadra, may all the lower realms of suffering be emptied. I think we should dedicate it especially for the politicians to be able to sort out Brexit. Something needs to be done. Something desperate. So thank you. Thank you, Alex. That was a very good idea. We dedicate this punya to the enlightenment of all sentient beings. May all sentient beings realize complete and perfect awakening. May the heart's awareness awaken in the unawakened. Where it has begun to stir, may it never fade, and may it awaken fully. Chantus and Rinpoche,